and welcome back to another episode of Lewwe Hear From Doc. I'm your host, Amanda Japal George, and with me is Dr. the Right Honorable Claudius Mitchell. So, Dr. Mitchell, how are you doing?
I'm good. I missed you last week.
I know.
I look forward a lot to this program, and its encounter is very important to us, and of course to the people of the country. So I look forward to this.
How was your weekend? Tell us about your weekend. I know it was a packed one.
Well, they had a lot of social activities. I had friends from all across the region was coming in for the cricket match that was played with West Indies in Australia. So it was more of a social interaction with friends and of course family members. So that's what the weekend was all about: fun and relaxation and being at Queen's Park, enjoying the game that I love.
Well, let's talk about that for a while. At one point, you captained the Grenada team, the Windward Leeward youth team, I believe, and you've also assisted with the cricket board over the years, and has always been a passionate cricket fan. What's your take on the Test match that was played right here in Grenada?
Well, first of all, I thought it was a good thing to have an international game, because when we conceptualized the building of the cricket stadium, which came first, the athletics came afterwards. It was about investment in the young people, sports to the country, and of course, by implication, the development of the physical talent, whether it's soccer, whether it's cricket, whether it's athletics, and all forms of sports. So that was the main reason. And you recall that the present governing party, the NDC, viciously opposed the investment in the stadium. So I was happy to see them now enjoying it and feeling happy about it. So I think so having the game that that level of cricket here, the Australian team is supposed to be one of the two best teams in the world. It just was beaten by South Africa in the Test final recently. So having them here and watching the game being played on a facility, I think it meant a lot to me. So I from that standpoint, I think it's positive. But at the level of the cricket itself, I must say, clearly the wicket was a difficult one to bat on, and it was clearly demonstrated by the fact that the Australian batsmen, no one scored a century in this game. There's a clear indication that the wicket had something to do with it, although I believe the bowling quality of the bowling on both sides had something to do with it also. So from that standpoint, I thought that it was good to watch quality bowling from both teams. And I think that's one area I think the West Indies certainly is looking reasonably good. Over the years, we have had extremely good fast bowling products in the region that we have been proud of, and we could go through the history of West Indies cricket. But I don't think we have fallen short this time, relatively speaking. The bowling contingent, quartet that West Indies have varied, and also I think at a high level, and will compete with any team in the world as far as that is concerned. Where there was shortfall, I believe, and where we did not compete, and the results showed the batting performance of the West Indies team. In both matches, the one in Barbados and the one here, the same thing happened. They did okay in the first innings in both matches, but when it came to the last innings, when they had to dig in and fight, you saw the lack of technical ability and skills clearly showed up. And so that was a very big disappointment, I believe, for the crowd and for the people present, and those of us who understand quality batting. And definitely, I believe that's an area West Indies board has to look seriously at what is happening to our batting contingent. We really need to have a couple top-class batsmen. And the history of West Indies cricket we have always been able to produce over the last 50 years. Any given period, top-class batsmen that rank around the world. In the early days of the Frank Worrell, the Everton Weeks, and in the 30s and the 20s and so on. And then you had later on Gary Sobers and Rowan Canai in the 60s and 50s, late 50s, and you had Seymour Norris, you had Viv Richards and them in the 70s, you could just keep naming. And then Brian Lara, the top class, world class batsman, but we are not being able to produce that type of player at this time. So I think that is something that's concerning, that the West Indies Cricket Board will have to look and address. What is responsible for this? Why are we not able to produce a world class batsman at this particular time? I think that's it. So that was a disappointing thing, but I felt good about Uday. I thought the crowd support was reasonable on Saturday. That was the only day I saw a reasonable amount of persons. But and the other days you saw more foreign guests, the Australians contingent and other Caribbean nationals who came in for the game, or cricket fanatics, I would call them, who are following West Indies cricket, no matter where it is and what level of performance exists. They had more of them there than the Grenadian contingent, and that would have been a little bit of a concerning thing also. But all in all, I think it was good to have the game, and I just hope and look forward to West Indies looking at this. I have my friends on the board, and of course, Royal, I had a visit with Royal, and was also manager of the team, Royal Lewis from Grenada, and the coach also, Sammy, had been a good friend over the years when I used to be very involved with West Indies cricket and so on. So I spoke to them and about what I saw and my experience watching the game and so on, because they know that I would have some ideas of what I saw and provided my how I see things to them. So I hope and pray that they can get being able to do something about what I saw, the quality of lack of batsmanship in the West Indies team at this particular time. So that was my take. So a good weekend from that standpoint.
You just looking at you can tell that you're very passionate about cricket. You've been listing names from way back over.
Yeah, he was ardent. As a little boy, we get up in the morning, cricket in Australia, 60s, and turn on the little radio we had. Because those days we have no television, and the radio have, and the radio sometimes. And sometimes the most exciting part about the radio cut off because the cockroach and them get inside it, and you have to pong the radios to get back reception. So it was fun getting up 3 and 4 talking about it and listening cricket, And so that was been my experience. So I'm always been. My brother too also played for Grenada. He was there with me. We watched the game together and so on. So that's why we growing up in our village. Cricket was all we had. We later on then football became an important part of the community, but it was more cricket. Whether it's on the beach, whether it's in the road, we didn't have a playing field. As I was able to organize the Bushishu playing field for the youngsters. In those days, we had first-class teams. At one time, we had about 5 players from Happy Hill playing for Grenada. Today, we have none, and we had no field. Today we have a first-class field and no cricket no cricket team in it. So things have changed, and hopefully we'll be able to get back there.
Yes. Well, Doc, we're moving on. The numbers don't lie. Grenada's debt increased by over 730 million in 2 years without a single new capital project. What are your views on this?
Well, it is clear that this calls for serious inquiry as to what is taking place, because I was shocked when I heard that the debt increased, because I would have assumed that there were little or no debt increase in the last 3 years, because this government is the first government that came in the office in Grenada's history and meet a lot of cash and were able to identify a lot of cash. In the initial period, as you recall, I mentioned before, and they agreed that they met a lot of money, and they said the Treasury was pregnant. In our days, we didn't have a treasury. When we got into government, it's not only empty, but also we owed a lot of debts that we had to beg around to get help. So they made $500 million. And when Beryl came, recall that because of the investment we initiated after Ivan occurred, they were able to collect $118 million from CRIF, from the CRIF program that we invested. So it's all NNP work. And they collected all that money in just 3 weeks. And they themselves boasting that they raised over $1 billion. It's selling passports. Now, if you're selling something, you don't have to be innovative. You don't have to be imaginative or almost have a serious developmental concept to just sell something, right? And therefore, when you combine all that money, cash, that they had, I couldn't understand that they're telling you now that the debt has increased by $730 million. Remember, the debt was $2 billion Grenada had over the last 50 years of governance. So one government come in, and in just 3 years, they have increased the debt almost by 50% of what all the governments in the past increased the debt to. And in addition, having a lot of cash. In our case, you could understand that we, as I mentioned, obviously, over a couple of interviews we have done, I mentioned the fact that we had to go to Trinidad to beg Trinidad and receive $25 million US dollars. I think it's 25 or 25, I believe, US dollars from Kamala as a soft loan to pay salaries, to meet basic expenses, not to develop a project. So we had to do a lot of initiative and so on to be able to get our economy going and to bring back to the point of fiscal stability, to the point that by the time we left government 8 years later, we had, and they themselves said that we had over $500 million. And in addition to all the work that we are creating, remember when we had this holiday period of the 4 or 5 times a year, there are over 6,000 people on the roads in the country cleaning all the streets. Now the bushes are covering the roads and making it difficult for traffic. And also the potholes all over the country is something that I remember when I just returned there in 1984 after the revolution collapsed. The roads were in terrible shape. So it was well known that the PRG did not spend a lot of money on infrastructure development and so on. And I think it's getting almost to that period, looking at every part of the country, even the main artery going down to the airport. You see that piece of road that never had any major, you see in potholes and cracks with different parts of that road heading to the airport. And remember, the first experience one gets when he comes into a country is the roads that you see immediately after you're driving off from the airport. So it must be create an impression for people. But all over the country, it's the roads are in terrible shape, and you're not seeing the initiative taken. So the question you ask yourself, where does all that money gone? There's no major project. Every project that is ongoing, right, is what this government, the past government initiated. The airport project that they're boasting about, and they opened and they didn't even send an invitation to the past government Minister of Works, because I don't want any invitation for myself. They're boasting as if it's their project, nothing to do with them. We negotiated, and of course the project was in operation for about a year and something before they came into office. The Mount Kuma project, the other major projects that are ongoing right now are all NNP constructed projects. Even the Simon sporting complex, which is stalled, and the Molyneux Road slippage that occurred that we had to invest. We had invested. We had put aside 11 point something million dollars. Now I understand because of the incompetence and mismanagement. And of course, what you're hearing about major corruption in almost all areas of government. And I understand it's over $30 million spent on that road. It's still not yet finished. Because they said they had to put another layer on the road. It's cracking up already. and over $30 million spent. I wondered where is that 30 million and how could they account for over that kind of level of expenditure on one road in the country at this particular time. And that again was an NNP project. So there's one major project that this government could say in 3 years it has. Maybe the major project is traveling and having fun. That is the major project, it appears to me. And to the people of the country, that appears to be one consistent pattern, enjoying themselves and, of course, doing whatever they feel they have to do for their friends and whoever close to them.
You said traveling, right? And I think Calypsonian sang a little thing on that. You know, that the Prime Minister is only traveling like if he's the Grenada dove.
Well,
oh, Lord.
See, when I became Prime Minister, I spent all over years traveling all over the world as a consultant and representing my company in the States as a mathematical consultant. So I travel all over the world. In the Caribbean, I travel all over the Caribbean playing cricket. So travel was at least my interests and so on. But if you never did that before and you reach in a position where travel is a possibility, you might reach the point of abusing it if that is the perception out there. So I think that is, and it's not just one, the Prime Minister, it's the whole team. I mean, this guy is traveling with delegations that we've never traveled with, and they're traveling often all over the place, all of them. And one of the things that we instituted, because we had a free for all in governments in the past, where there were no serious accountability. Ministers were just traveling on their own. They just asked their peers or whoever it is to organize a trip. The cabinet never knew. I mean, in some cases, when we came to the government, that was the history. We put stop to that. Any minister to travel using government funds must come to cabinet and give a justification, and cabinet approve only the funds that are that one could justify. But that clearly has been done away with, and the public servants will know that they are the accounting officers, not the ministers. The ministers are not the accounting officers, and therefore, if you go signing off things that turns out to be not right, you could be held accountable by the people of the country and by the institutions. And therefore, it concerns me that some of the public servants could be in trouble with a change in government if a CS inquiry is instituted. In fact, I believe an inquiry should be instituted now. And recall when there were all the propaganda briefcase against my government, I initiated a commission's inquiry because I knew that it was false. And I felt confident that it would clear me, which it precisely did. And that whole thing died afterwards. If I didn't do that, I would have still having a label of this whole briefcase thing as being having some truth in it and so on. And I think the government should realize right now, all over the country, at different levels, within their own party, people are talking about the blatant perception of blatant corruption. And if that is out there, and a minister is coming and telling us that yes, their money is being badly spent and wasted and misused, I mean, this is fascinating. It's quite shocking in my view. To say that and nobody's fired, there's no investigation, nothing. No, but please don't say anything, because if you are talking about you know of corruption with people's money, and you are minister or you're the prime minister and you have done nothing about it, you did not resign, nothing, and shut up. You shouldn't be speaking about it because you are also culpable. Coming out and tell us that doesn't clear you from the corruption. Because if you know members of your own party or government is misusing the taxpayers' money, you have a fundamental responsibility. I remember people used to be coming to me, Prime Minister, telling me things about certain ministers of government. And I say, okay, I hear you, and I would not dispute it, but please bring me the evidence. And no one will come to you for the evidence, and you can't act based on the perception. But if you have evidence that you, as one minister said, then why would you sit there with that? And knowing that the taxpayers' money is not the ministers of government money. It is the taxpayers' money, and they have a responsibility to account for taxpayers' resources.
You mentioned contractors and so forth, Doc. So before I go to my next question, I just want to ask you this. Do you believe that the current vetting process for contractors is being compromised by favoritism? Like,
First of all, it appears that the whole system is broken down.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was a deliberate, my view,
Mm-hmm.
because systems were in place. So if men are able to, I've heard and people have told me,
Mm-hmm.
a certain minister will call them and say, I have a contract for you.
Mm.
I don't know how that is possible in the system that we operate in, because no minister gave contracts, right? There must be. You might say, look, you have applied for a contract,
Mm-hmm.
and during the system, you might tell somebody, yes, you have won a contract, but tell them, I have a contract with you. Come and get it. That's a bit frightening, to say the least. And I think that is clearly. But I remember, I am not surprised at what happened now, because the first setting of Parliament.
Mm-hmm.
Now we in the previous government, you were not any little to $500 or $1,000 a contract you had to give somebody. You had to go to a whole tender board. I don't see need for that. Why do you have the Ministry of Works responsible? Why can't a serious permanent secretary ensure that the process of giving those small contracts are done with proper oversight and accountability and so on? So we didn't agree. We felt that was hamstrung in the government to get action on the ground. Everything becomes so bureaucratic. So we decided to raise it the threshold where the Ministry of Works can give out contract for $15,000 and so on. And some they were debating even their own cabinet. Some felt that it was a bit high, some felt it was a bit low. And in final analysis, we decided that 15,000 was a appropriate level. So the cabinet made a decision giving contract without going through the tender board. We have to submit contracts and so on. Submit proposals and so on. Okay. The government in its first sitting of Parliament, and I was shocked, came to Parliament and asked to raise it from 15,000 to 100,000. So ministers of the government now is calling people and tell them, I have a contract for $90,000, a contract for 100,000. That's a lot of money in our context. So there's no the rules. Besides the system that we had for such small contracts, that has broken down, right? That has gone, evaporated. So that has evaporated, and also the threshold for giving them. So I was good enough, because I don't know the Prime Minister. I didn't know him, and I still don't know much about him. So I approached him and said, I thought, Prime Minister, let me say this, I think he's making a mistake to raise this thing from. Tell me, don't worry about it, he'll handle that. Well, I understand now how he's handling it, because we see that it's taking place in the country. So that was my exact interaction with him, because I warned him that he doesn't know much about the public service. He did not know much about governance and the political aspects of this and the administrative. As a lawyer, he lived in the corporate world, not even in the normal legal world. Fraternity is the corporate law that he practiced. So I was doing my duty as a concerned citizen, and I told him that I thought it was a mistake. He told me no, he could handle it. And as I said, I think he's doing a good job in hurting his party and the image of his government by what is taking place with this $100,000 threshold that they put in place for contracts of this nature.
I mean, you sow, you reap what you sow. That's the common saying.
But
because right now,
if that they differently wanted to do it. In my mind, I don't see how I could explain it otherwise. Because the fact that you know them, you must know the men you're working with, that you have in your team. You must know many of them didn't have a very good job before. Many of them are basically financially was not in any good position, except for the Prime Minister himself. Almost all his members were people with very little material strength. And therefore, when you put people in a position of responsibility with little material strength and everybody like nice things, you would know that you have to put serious systems in place to control what is considered a man's normal appetite for helping themselves. That's a normal human being attribute. So one has to know that. And if you have that understanding, then you put system. But it's clear that no system was put. In fact, the system we had in place was destroyed, and then the threshold was increased. So I cannot say anything else. And then you put someone who has a history of problems, and you make him acting prime minister. So, and he's all over the place, doing all kinds of things, and projects are started, can't finish, and you don't know who is the minister of works or who is the minister responsible for it, because everybody dabbling in contracts all over the place. That's frightening. So the whole situation of government, lack of accountability, and that's why the last time when I was in Sutton, I called him my brother Tillman Thomas, who used to always talk about transparency
and accountability.
And I really would want to hear Brother Thomas's voice about accountability, transparency, and good governance, because these are words. And I think he meant it, although I think he was wrong in many cases when he made accusation. But I understood his points. But he's not saying a word today when the evidence is so glaring that these things are happening. And so I call on Brother Tillman to do something about this.
Well, right now it's all about mismanagement of funds, misuse of funds right now. But Doc, you mentioned that he should have known the persons that he was going to put there. But you know, sometimes people come together and form a team because they have a common enemy. So they're not they're not taking into consideration the intellectual levels, their capabilities, and stuff like that. They're just thinking, okay, so this person hates NMP so bad, so let me pull them with me and let's form a team. Sometimes it's all that, you know. It's
I think it's also about, it's mainly about getting power. I don't even know that it was really about, as you say, hating an enemy or such. Men are interested in power, and sometimes they create an enemy. If they perceive that the creation of that perceived enemy is in their interest to get power.
Yeah.
Because some of them don't know me as an individual, so I can't say it was just personal. They used the personal thing because they perceived the population was tired of the NNP and Keith Mitchell, so it was easy to throw that propaganda out. But I think it's about obtaining power for themselves. Now they get power, then you can see the action. There's no enemy anymore. So it's about me now enjoying myself. And that I think is the clear thing, clear evidence that we're getting coming from inside that government. And that's why people are so shocked with the level of corrupt practices taking place in the country, with no one being held accountable. But what people say, one day, Congote.
Doc, the Physical Resilience Act escape clause is now triggered until 2027, and they said that occurred because of burial. What risk does this pose for transparency and physical accountability, especially with a general election due that very same year?
But it's clear that they have misused the Fiscal Responsibility Act to create an opportunity for them to do what they wish. To not adhere to the act as it is right now, right? Should have been only used on a clear understanding of what is taking place in the country and some serious disaster nationally. Remember, Beryl hit Carriacou in the northern part to some extent, a little bit. So that's one part of the country. And we made arrangement and got $180 million to deal with that. So it could not have been a pressure on the fiscal problems in the country, because provision was there and you collected the money to start to work. You know, so they should not have been doing away with the fundamental rules that protect the accountability and fiscal stability of the country. Because when you move up a rule and the debt is being accruing and you're not paying the principal or whatever it is, the debt is bludgeoning up odds. And that not you're not getting away from the debt. It's just getting bigger and bigger. And it's cumulative effect going forward. So it become a bigger problem later on. So the more you suspend, the longer you suspend that act to allow you just to do what you want. You're in effect saying, I don't want to worry about 5 years ago, 4 years ago. I suppose the perception is, if we don't win, that's the headache of the next government. But that's highly irresponsible. And if we had behaved like this, they would not have met $500 million in the treasury when they came in. And it tells you the difference between NMP government and NMP's leadership in a time, and I don't mean myself, I talk about leadership, the key members and you people like the Gregory Boyds and others in the government were highly responsible for the success of the NMP's period of fiscal management and development in the country as a whole. So there's that clear difference between the NMP and the NDC's government.
Well, Doc, we're about to wrap up, but from your vantage point, do you believe the integrity of the electoral process in Carriacou is under threat?
Well, I believe that there's a clear incident of lack of understanding of the person who is supposed to be the registration officer in Carriacou, and has been and maybe still, if she's not moved or if she doesn't resign, the returning officer in a constituency. And anyone who occupies such a position must be above board. You cannot be showing open partisan position or a partiality and so on. And I think the fact that you would put on a jersey or NNP or NDC and go into any public activity and being labeled as a partisan supporter and clearly ignoring the fundamental process, a principle of your responsibility. It calls. I think it, to me, this is a simple thing. If anyone had done anything like that during my time as Prime Minister, I would call the Governor General. If the Governor General did not act, because I didn't have to call the Governor General, he should know, he or she should know that they should not tolerate this when the information was brought to their attention. So if that has happened and he did not act, I would have a special meeting with him and say that, Gigi, I have a difficulty with this, because Gigi never gets blamed politically. It's the politician that will get blamed. So although I have no direct responsibility, and you have, Gigi, if you don't act, then I'm the one going to get political blame, and I don't want to be responsible for this. And I know the Governor General that I interact with in the past, Sir Paul Scott, Sir Reginald Palmer, and Sir Daniel Williams, they will not, that person wouldn't last a day after they found out. And the lady herself, I don't know her, my own view, so I have nothing against the person. But I think she herself should know it's not in her interest to want to stay. So even the Governor General refused to act, she herself also should not want herself engulfed in that political controversy in a very sensitive position that she now occupies. So there is a serious fallout of responsibility. The Prime Minister clearly cannot duck. The members of the government cannot duck. The Governor General has to ultimately take full responsibility and accept that she's clearly playing games with this. And she cannot play games with a serious issue like this. And clearly the lady herself should understand that it's not in our best interest, in our image, because that controversy will not die. And certainly the NNP will continue to make a lot of noises over this. Issue remains in that position. And it has nothing to do with the person. As I said, I don't know her. And some people say it's a decent lady, so I don't know the person. So it has nothing to do with the name, the family background, nothing about that. Where they're from, Carriacou. If it happened in Happy Hill, I would say, it happened to my first cousin or brother and did that, I would tell them, get out.
Yeah, right is right.
Yes.
Yeah. Dr. Mitchell, this is your final question. We're in the carnival season, right? What role do you think that culture plays in national healing and unity, especially in economically hard times like these?
Well, clearly, that's a very important area. And the messages of in the by the artists can be very positive. There's always in carnival, pecan is always. I mean, in fact, as you know, I was there in government for a lot of years, and I got a good share of 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 the pecan related to my actions in government, and I was the story of almost every carnival season where it was created or otherwise. Whether I had something to do with it or not, it was created because it was important, and the evidence would show that I never acted against anyone who sang negatively against me or the government, because in some cases I thought they went out of line, and I would meet them and express those personal views to individuals who I didn't believe had anything against me or wanted to get the public reaction against me. Um, I, I, I would always advise them that was not good for the country and so on. But I believe they have a major role to play, and I think they can be used to heal and bring people together and so on. And I believe, hopefully, we can see more of that going forward. The carnival season, I certainly believe our carnival is becoming more and more popular item, like Bobby second only to Trinidad in the Caribbean, and maybe Barbados with Carpover, because of the size of the population and the historical and international connections of those countries going forward. But I certainly look forward to it. I think it's good for the country, and certainly would ask people to continue to give their support to the artists and to the people involved. And it's a tough ask, tough act to lead in a serious issue of that nature. So they need a country behind them, and I certainly look forward to more of that unity being displayed throughout this carnival season.
All right. So, Dr. Mitchell, that's all the time we have for today. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.